Hello everyone and welcome back to this new tutorial. Today I will show you how to authenticate users in Node.js using Passport. Well, Passport is an authentication middleware for Node.js. It is extremely flexible and modular, and it is mostly used in Express-based web applications. It consists of number of strategies to support authentication using username or password, or either through various websites like Facebook, Twitter, and GitHub, etc. So now we will be using this passport local strategy that will allow us to authenticate users using a username as well as password. You can read more information about it over here. Also, I'm using Mongodb database for storing of data of username storing data. You can download Mongodb from their official website. So first, let's create our Express web application. So in order to create an Express web application, I am using their Express generator application that will allow us to quickly create a template for our application. You can read more information about this Express generator over here. You can install this by using this command. So I've already installed this app, so I can use Express view and we need to specify the view engine, that would be EJS. So now let's install the dependencies or the modules using install command. It will take some time. Now we install these modules, but we also require some additional modules as well, which are, say, Express session, which is a session middleware for Node.js. We need bcrypt Node.js to hash our password. We need passport as well as passport local strategy, and for MongoDB connection we need mongoose. So now let's open this app in Visual Studio Code. So first let's open this app.js and configure our modules. We need mongoose, and let's connect to our MongoDB database. .connect MongoDB, and the database name, say we need login. We also need Express session, and let's configure this Express session middleware. We can do it over here. Session, the secret to encrypt our cookies or data. Save initialize false, and resave set to false as well. Now let's also include this passport as well. Now let's create a new file, passport.config or passport.js, which will consist our passport configuration. Not the router, but we need passport. Also let's include the passport local strategy as well. require passport local dot strategy. Now let's create a MongoDB model which will store information. So create a new folder, say db, and inside this db folder we need another file that would be user.js. So let's import or include the mongoose, require mongoose, require mongoose dot schema, new schema, which consists the definition of our model, that means what fields it will contain. So for this I'm just using username with the type string and required true. Required true is basically a validation that this value is required, and we can do the same for password as well as. So for this tutorial I'm using only these two fields. If you want, you can add additional field as well. So now let's create a model, module.exports mongoose.model. The first parameter is the name, say we want users. The second is the schema, which is users schema, and the collection name, say users. Now let's quickly create our login as well as sign up views. So go to the views folder and create two files. One is the login.ejs as well as signup.ejs. Now let's copy this and paste in the signup.ejs as well, and we need signup. And that's all right. So now let's open this routes and index.js and include or create the login as well as sign up pages. So we need login. If user requests login, we need to render that login.ejs file, and we can just remove the data that is passed to the ejs file. And for sign up, we need sign up. Now let's run this server. Go to this login and open a command prompt over here, and for this I'm using nodemon, which is a node monitor for Node.js applications, which automatically restarts our application if it sees any changes. You can read more information from their official page, and you can install this nodemon from this command. Now the server is started, and open this localhost 3000. Try to visit login, and it works. Same for the sign up. Okay, now let's create our sign up functionality for our application. Go to this. So in order to have this, we need to create another route that would be auth, and we will pass all the authentication requests to that particular route. So go to this routes folder and create another route that will be auth.js. So we can just copy this index.js and paste it over here. We can just say remove these extra routes, and instead it will be a little different from the other routes, because instead we need a function that will accept a parameter that will be passport, because we need to pass a configure passport to this particular route so that we can access the passport properties. So which will return router, and copy this and paste it over here. Also we need the user model as well. Require user. So when a user makes a post request to the sign up, we can add him into our database. So first thing we need to check is whether this username exists in the database or not. So user.find one username, but also we need to get the username as well as password from the request.body object. So we can use our request.body and say username is equal to body.username and password the second is a callback function which will with two parameters. The first is error and the second is the document. So if there is an error, response.status 500.send error occurred. Else, if the document is present, that means he is already in the database, so we can send the same error with the message username already exists. Or else we can insert into the database. Also we need to hash our passwords. So we can go back to this user.js and create an additional method that would be user schema.methods, say hash password function, which is a function. Also we need to include the bcrypt Node.js module. Require bcrypt Node.js. This function returns the value which will be bcrypt.hash sync, which is a synchronous function to hash our password. The first parameter is the data string, which will be say password, and the salt string, you can generate a salt using their function, which is bcrypt.generate salt sync, and the default rounds is set to, and we also need to generate or create another method which will be compare password. And it takes two parameters, the password and hash. Instead we need another function, that is compare sync, which is also a synchronous function. The data would be the password and the hash would be, say, hash. Now go back to this auth.js, and instead what we can do is let's remove this and record dot. Now we can access this method hash password record dot the document would be, say, username. In the record dot username, that is set to username, and record dot password, which is set to record dot hash password and the password string. Record dot save, which is a function which takes two parameters, that is error or user. So if there is an error, we can do the same over here, db error, or else send the user. Okay, now let's test this out. Go to the sign up and hit refresh. Also, we one thing we have missed, that we haven't included the route in our app.js. So create another route, that is will be auth, and over here app.use which will be auth. One more thing, we also need to pass on the passport as well. Now let's say create an user admin and with password admin. There is an error. Okay, record dot, yes, go back to this auth.js and here it is, hash password. Okay, and it worked perfectly fine. You can see this record was inserted into our database. This is our hashed password and with username admin, and this is our ID. So now we are halfway through, and now we need to implement this login functionality. So now let's configure our passport. So go back to this app.js and we need to configure it. So require passport, and we need to pass on the passport, and over here passport dot initialize to initialize our passport. Initialize, in the same for session. These both are middlewares, so now by using app.use we are configuring them. Both the initialize as well as sessions are the middlewares for Express web application. So go back to this passport.js and Let's configure it. Passport.serialize user the user, and done. Both serialize as well as deserialize users is our function. Serialize function is basically to add the user into our session, as well as deserialize user remove the user from the session. Both of these functions have a callback function with two parameters. The first is the user and the second is a verify callback. So we can execute this done callback function. It accepts two parameters. The first is error and the second is the user document. So when there is no error, we can pass null and the user. Same goes for here as well. Now let's create our strategy for our login. So in order to create strategy, we use passport.use function. Use new local strategy. So basically it accepts two parameters. The first is an optional parameter, that is options. So it consists of various fields like a username field and password field. This is basically required when you have the username field or password field different from the default values that are username and password. So if you have, you can pass these values over here. So we can just omit this for now and go back to the function. The first it has three parameters. The first is the username, the password, and a done, which is a verify callback. This verify callback done plays a very important role. So we also need this user module as well. For user require user. The username as well as password are generally the values of the username and password. So let me tell you how it works. First, let's print this console username and password. Now go back to this auth.js and create another page that would be router.use, not use but the post. The first is the path, which is login, and the second. So in order to authenticate any request, we need passport.authenticate. The first parameter is the string or the name of our strategy, which is local, and also an callback, which is basically an object which consists the properties failure redirect and the success redirect. So in case of any failure, we can redirect him back to the login, or in the case success, we can redirect him back to the profile. This profile page we haven't created right now, but we will create later on. So we can also create another handler which will accept request as well as response, and we can send response.send. Hey, okay. Now let's try to log in. First, go back to this login and add admin as well as admin. Now if you open this console, you can see the username as well as password. Now we can use this username and password and query our database whether this username exists or not. So we can just go back to this Passport.js and configure our strategy. So user.find1 username, and the second is a callback function with the error or document. So if there is an error, we can execute the done callback function. Error, else if the document is present, or else if it is not present. If it is not present, we can execute this done callback with error set to null, and the second parameter, that is user, we can pass false. So if the document is present, we need to verify the password as well. So if there is document present, then we can use compare password. Okay, there's an spelling mistake. Compare password, and we can execute this function over here. The first was the password, which is password, and the second will be the hash. So doc.password. So if the username or password is valid, or if it is not valid. If it is not valid, we can use the same over here, and instead if it is valid, then we can pass on and doc. Or we can use username, doc.username, and the same for password, which will be doc.password. Okay. So now let's see and try to log in again. Admin and admin. Okay, so a viewer redirect back to this profile page. That means that the login process was successful, or else if we if the username or password was incorrect, in such a case we are redirect back to this login page. That means there was a failure in login. So now let's quickly create our profile page. Go back to this index.js and create another route or page that will be profile, and instead we can send back request.session. Now hit refresh and log in again. First let me show you what profile page looks like. And now if we log in again, now you can see the username or password was inserted into the session. That means the login process was successful. So as you can see, this profile page can be accessed by any person whether he is logged in or logged out. So in order to avoid that, we can create another handler, which is logged in function request and response, as well as and third parameter, which is next. Is request.is authenticated, which returns a boolean that is true or false. true if he is logged in or false if he is not. So if he is logged in, we can allow him to access the page, or else we can redirect him back to the login page. Response.redirect login. Also, we need the user to log out from the page. Request and response, request.logout and response.send back to the home page. So now we can pass this handler over here, and go back, hit refresh, and now we are not able to access this profile page. Now first let's log in into the page, and now we can access this profile page. Now if we want to log out, and we are okay, now we are logged out from our application. If we try to access profile, we will be redirected back to the login page. So now with Passport, we were easily able to create our login as well as sign up functionality using Passport. So this was our today's tutorial. If you liked it, do hit the like button and subscribe the channel for more videos like this. If you have any suggestion or anything, you can ask in the comments, and I will be uploading this sample project so you can test this application. And thanks for watching.